Good afternoon. It's lovely to be here. Haven't been in Singapore for a long time, and it's great to see this city flourishing. It's also wonderful because this is the first time that BAMM has been present at Qual 360, and we're very, very happy to be here. However, I have good news and bad news for you. Which would you like first? Hands up, those who'd like the bad news first. Hands up, those who'd like the good news first. Okay, so already I'm researching it for your levels of optimism. There's also another bit of bad news, but I'll tell you that in a second, that you're all going to have to do some work during this session. The bad news is, this is for a bank, so I'm going to talk about a bank. As is Solomon, Harris almost. The good news is I've got a lovely long 4-minute film for you to watch, and so you can all sit back and enjoy that. But I've also got a bit of work. And for that, you're going to need a pen and a bit of paper. I'll tell you what it is in a little bit. Okay, so this is for the colossus that is HSBC. I remember somebody telling me that traders for HSBC in Hong Kong often have funds greater than the total GDP of a country. That's how big it is. And that lovely bipolarity of it between Hong Kong and London. However, there's also rumors around advertising agencies, not just in London and New York, Shanghai. And I hate to say this, I'm going to say this very quietly so nobody hears in the banking sector, but it's about the banking sector. People saying that it's pale, male, and stale. Ooh, horrible. Imagine if your category was called that, pale, male, and stale. Okay, however, HSBC are not that pale, male, and stale, because what they wanted to do, which is the subject of this study, is to understand the emerging affluent 20 to 30-year-olds, the millennial generation. And this was very, very important to them. Maybe they sensed they were a little bit pale, male, and stale, but also they were very aware that East and West, across the world, this was a generation that had come of age at a very critical time. What was that critical time? 2008, affecting the West particularly badly. So this generation held very different views, they guessed correctly, from the older generations. And they wanted to find out what that was. So they gave BAMM, and I'll tell you a little bit more about BAMM in a second, they gave us a task. And the task was to look at what their brand purpose is, which is ambition. HSBC's brand purpose is ambition, and how to understand how that walks and talks, how it lives among this younger generation. So, BAMM were given this task. But first of all, who is BAMM? Who is BAMM? Well, what we do at BAMM is we like to think, as everyone does, at the sort of cutting contemporary edge of qualitative research. And we very much, as one of the speakers said earlier, we're very much about looking at conversations without agendas. We are very much from a social science background. I'm a social psychologist, psychoanalyst, Jungian psychoanalyst by training. And all my colleagues are either psychologists or anthropologists. We do cultural tracking, a great deal of that. We do technical observation. We do ethnography, which is probably our heartland. We do a lot of open discussion research. However, as you're about to find out when I tell you about our study for HSBC Advance, I think one of the learnings we have at BAMM is the more open the question, the more structured you have to be in how you ask or how you structure the session. We also do some interrogative research, but I'd say that we at BAMM are much more on the observational side than we are at the discursive or interrogative end. Okay, global footprint, if you can see that there, is all over the place. We're opening in New York in January, and we want to come here next October. And I want to ask you over breaks, where should we come to? Jakarta, Shanghai, Singapore, and I'll get you all to vote for that. What should be our third office? But what I'm here to talk to you about today is HSBC. This is the kind of clients we have. And here I'd like you to do some work, because you've all been far too quiet. So have you got a bit of paper, and have you got a bit of a pencil or a pen in front of you? And the question I want to ask you is, I want to find out about how ambition lives in your life, your life, your life, your life, your life, your life over there. How would you go about doing that? How would I find out how ambition lived in your life? Can you just take a minute to think about that? If I come into your house, obviously I wouldn't tell you that, hopefully, but I wanted to work out what ambition meant, how you enacted ambition. What would I do? How could I find out from you? Would you let me know? Could you tell me? Would I even have to talk to you at all? Would I simply look at your material culture, the artifacts in your home? What would I do? Would I talk to your friends? Would I look at just your bank balance? Would I look at the car in your garage or your driveway? How would I do it? Okay, pretty tricky, we thought. And indeed, I think we actually, this was quite a journey for BAMM, because I don't think at the beginning of the outset of this project, we got it right. I think we got it wrong at the beginning, then we corrected ourselves. So this is a bit of a story of a project. What we did, the markets involved, very global, were USA, Mexico, Brazil, UK, France, UAE, Philippines, and Hong Kong. So that's the markets we covered. And we started by thinking, what we'll do is we'll just do traditional ethnographies. We'll go in, we have a system sometimes, when we go in and we talk to people for an hour, do an ethnography with them, and if we feel that they actually are going to reveal a lot about ambition, we go back and we spend about 5 hours with them, visiting, talking to their children if they're relevant, going to their work with them. But this time we realized that with this particular generation, 20 to 30-year-olds, they went dark on us. They went dark on us for a very long period of time. For, indeed, what was our friend of Facebook saying? How many hours were they going dark? We reckoned about 6 hours, and we knew we had to watch them through that time. So what we did was both netnography and ethnography. And netnography is what we call, when we follow people, we ask them to befriend us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Weiho, whatever it is. Social listening we describe as something quite different. So what we did here was we followed and befriended online, very ethically, of course, being very careful about MRS guidelines. So what we had going was both an online observation of what these people were doing, plus we visited the same people offline. So what we got from them was a tremendous sense of their online selves and their offline selves. And I don't know how many of you have heard of verification theory. Hands up if you've heard of verification theory. Verification theory is an interesting one. What it is to do with, do you remember that time, you probably don't remember, you first went on social media and the anonymity of it was absolutely wonderful. Do you remember that? Absolutely wonderful. You could be who you wanted to be. You could say what you wanted to say. Well, there's now a lot of understanding about this under what's loosely called verification theory, which is the stress it causes. So people offline are one person, online somebody else. A lot of understanding of what that can do to a person's psyche and persona. However, going back to HSBC, what we had from these people was a tremendous sense of their offline and their online worlds. I think we had 64 people globally. We understood a lot. And for us, it was the first time, and I don't think I've heard of anyone else doing this, we really understand how money lives in the online world. So we learned a lot about that as well. However, jumping forward a bit, and indeed having made you do that exercise of how I'd come and interrogate you about your ambition, I'll have a feedback system on that later. But what we found out about this generation and ambition was very, very simple. And that's going to be the subject of the film I'm about to show you. And then I'm going to sort of bear down a little bit on the detail. But we've called this film Horizontal Ambition. And it was very important to understand this fully and also take it to the stakeholders across the world at HSBC, because they themselves often, as stakeholders, what they wanted was to be promoted. They lived in a vertical line. To them, ambition was about getting a promotion, getting a bonus, going back and telling their wife that they were going to be relocated on more money, they were going to go up the tree. It was very hard for them to understand what we call horizontal ambition. This generation, who prefer, perhaps even don't even want to go up the promotional tree, who were more interested in experiences and different ways of doing things. And that's what this film is about, and I'll pick up some of the points later. We'll miss on that one.
Attitudes towards money have changed for HSBC's younger audience for two key reasons. Firstly, they're now entirely dependent on digital technology. The way they relate to the world has been profoundly influenced by their online experience. Technology has made life entirely easier. And we're always on, day or night. We now even sleep with our smartphones. Secondly, they came of age through a profound financial crisis. Between March 2008 and October 2009, the economic crisis wiped $34.4 trillion from the global economy. Those who came of age during those years saw the old certainties around jobs, finance, security and housing ripped up and scattered to the four winds. And with that went the future they were promised. The question for us was clear. If the old future has gone, what does the new future look like? What is the new language of hope and ambition? And how should brands occupy this space? To find the answer, we spoke to 36 people in 7 markets around the world. We hung out and shared their lives with them, offline and online. Here is what we found. The old model of ambition was a steady vertical climb up the career ladder, and success was all about how high you could climb. Now ambition has gone horizontal. It's not about how high you can climb, it's about the richness of the experiences you can gather along the way. More now seek risk. More seek adventure.
Soy arriesgada. Me gusta arriesgarme y pues ver qué pasa. O sea, no hay nada peor. No, ahorita no tienes nada. Entonces, si arriesgas, a lo mejor ganas. Y si no, te quedas igual. Entonces no pasa nada.
There's a hunger for a broader, more experiential set of ambitions. Brands need to be aware that this generation do not look to a distant future for fulfillment. The horizontal model of ambition is much more focused on the here and now.
I definitely want to be able to be independent, and it also scares me to think in the future that I might wake up and hate where the direction of my life has gone in, or that I haven't felt like I've done enough, or that I've missed out on doing something that I could have done.
But I'm not thinking about something specific right now, because I'm thinking about opening my business after 1 year or 2 years. Everything changes daily.
Horizontal ambition is all about self-fulfillment and personal growth, but it's also about sharing those experiences with others. From what clothes you will wear to what products your business will sell, social media is the final reference point for what happens next.
Social media has been great, especially with adding pictures. I'm actually able to get feedback from strangers that never met me. If they like it, that means that the product that I made, it's socially accepted.
For this generation, the digital realm has become an essential space, not only to validate what they've just done, but also to determine what they will do next. Our hopes and dreams have become a social experience. Where the deeply personal once also meant the deeply private, now it is profoundly public. Just as ambition has become more horizontal, so has the idea of wealth. This generation have developed a more nuanced understanding of currency. They're not motivated by money so much as they are by the opportunity for owning unique experiences.
成功嘅標準就對我嚟講好簡單嘅，成功嘅標準就係話你自己有一個可以即係講緊係一個比較自由嘅經濟能力啦。你有時間啦，有時間去見識唔同嘅國家啦。
Brands should be exploring ways in which they can tap into this idea of the unique and offer experiences that will have genuine social currency. Ultimately, horizontal ambition represents a new articulation of hope for a new generation. rather than capitulating to the idea that they will never achieve the same financial or career accomplishments as their parents. They have simply rejected their model for what counts as success in the first place. This is a generation that believes in its dreams, and soon they will become a reality.
Okay. We enjoyed that. So you can imagine the challenges a bank such as HSBC has in realizing that if it's about social currency rather than financial currency and assets, what do they do? The kind of traditional discourse of a bank, how does it actually meet this? Now that's what we're working on at the moment, but let me just take you through a little bit of the detail of the points, the emerging themes that we got from these people, and perhaps I can touch upon this methodology, which is very much about online and offline and how we did it. One common denominator we found was everything's changing, and this is, remember, very much an East and West global study. Everything was changing. Another common denominator we found was what a steep climb they believed it was going to be. It's not that the last decade was not fun in parts, but the thing about your 20s and early 30s is that they are actually quite hard. We heard that again and again, and there might be some people in that age group sitting here feeling the same thing. They were inexperienced. They didn't know where to go. And one fascinating thing that we found out was when we talked to people face-to-face in their homes between the ages of 20 and 30, they often talked about their parents as mentors. They constantly were referring to their dad or their mom who'd done this, done that, who was experienced in this. We noticed that online, mums and dads and parents were never mentioned once. So that was one of the many examples that we had for how the discourse, offline and online, is very different. A sense of unpredictable outcomes. One gentleman here from the UK saying most 20-somethings have resigned themselves to the fact that everything we think we know could be gone tomorrow. So that sense of, why plan? Why have this vertical plan when indeed you've got to sort of be aware that it could all change. So very, very strong messages. Also very conscious, perhaps even 10 years before we weren't this conscious of leaving a digital trail. And the sense of actually you were statementing when you actually put something down on digital. Again, no surprises there. A very fused online personal and business life. Whereas offline, they would talk about, well, I do this on a Saturday morning, for my pleasure, and then I work like this. Online, these two things were fusing, and we had a very strong sense of that, and we've done much additional analysis on this. Need for mentors. This is the point I mentioned. Parents were absent when it came to the online area. But again, what we found in this post-2008 era is that the banks were no longer had the sense of trust that they perhaps had at a previous generation, and a gap is appearing for mentors. However, and you can see if, the great saying that happiness lies in high expectations. For all the things we've said, this was a cohort of great expectation. Women beginning to level with men in education and income, power couples, many struggled, tertiary education was becoming common across the globe, very different from the generation before. And there were two worlds of financial transaction that we saw appearing. Since student days, they were used to regular financial transactions. During the 10-year period between 20 and 30, they met the irregular financial transaction, the need for a loan for a business, crisis money, travel money, wanting money for an MBA. And that navigation between the regular and irregular was very difficult for me. So this was one of the practical things that then HSBC had to think about and get moving on. Okay, just very, very quickly, I thought I'd share with you this section, which was our online section, conscious of time here, at looking at what they're looking at. How did we do that? Well, we had quite a solid success rate befriending people, because it's quite a sensitive topic when you say to someone, okay, you've spoken to me for 5 hours, now I'd like to befriend you on Facebook and follow you for a month. And of course, we have to be entirely ethical and transparent as how we're going to use that. We found that most people were very comfortable with this, partly because they'd met the researcher up front, and so it was a natural transition from researcher to friend. So we used these media, and then what did we find? We looked for how actively they posted. All these metrics, these qualitative metrics were included. We got a great deal of material, and we got that material. I must admit that we didn't really have an analytic grid as to what to do with it. I wish we'd had, actually, because what we were looking at is how does money appear and how does ambition appear online. And there were some surprising results on this. The first was, not surprisingly, online life curation and presentation were critical for the age group. Despite all the personal uncertainties we met offline, in this space, they always seemed to be in control. There was a portrayal of independent lives, very different from the lives we'd met when we met them face to face, which was still, in many cases, highly dependent on parenting. They looked to social media for their inspirations. This is where it came from. It wasn't coming from what their grandfather did or what their mother did. The inspirations were found online. What their peer group and their network was doing defined what they aimed for. Social media knew, permanent, and on wherever they went. And again, that's not surprising. But what was a little bit more surprising is the single fantasies can stay alive. We found often that we had people who had just got married, but their bachelor, their single lives were still continuing online. So you could see how sort of there was a multiple personae syndrome going on in some cases. And again, of great importance to us in our study, there was a distinct absence of any money mention. And we were slightly distraught at that. What were we to do? You know, here we were looking at money and looking at ambition, and we found no mention of money. Now, it would have been great if people had posted things like, just got a pay rise, just been able to buy my girlfriend an engagement ring. That we just did not see. What we started realizing was the discourse was very different online. It comes through status mentions, and again, we developed an analytic grid for how we understood that. It came from travel, that sense of, you know, I'm not in my day-to-day, I'm doing something very special right now. It came from luxury items, how they were posted, and the context in which they were posted. And it came through personal life success phenomenology. So what we did was we really looked at that in some detail. And indeed, for many people, it came through anti-consumerism. People were talking about the fact that they did not want to be consumerist. Even though we'd gone to their homes and we'd seen many of the usual artifacts, they were pegging themselves on a different kind of projection, personal projection, that they were anti-money. And that was not uncommon among this age group. And we saw polarization between materialists and non-materialists. Now, I've just had a warning of time, so actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip on, but I will happily share this with you, which is some of the examples that I have of how people's online and offline presences were very, very different. So here's Ed in the UK. And as I mentioned before, Ed had a bit of a time lag going on. I think one can euphemistically call it. Ed's Pinterest account was very much about sport, cars, and women, and boats as well, I think. A place to escape. There was no mention whatsoever of family. However, we spent 5 hours with Ed. I mean, you're very different. His Facebook as well appeared to be about his actual life, connecting with his near family. But when we actually went to see him, this was a man who had just gone through 2 redundancies in the 2008 downturn, and who had 3 little girls, I think it was Sophie, Amy, and June, you can see there, had a wife who was hard driving when it came to the quality of life, and Ed was under a great deal of pressure. So obviously his online life was to some extent a release valve for this. So by looking online and offline, we were able to put together the totality, the 360 of Ed's experience, and understand perhaps how a bank such as HSBC, when it comes to appeal to this millennial 20 to 30 target, can actually present itself in a way that is going to appeal. So I think that's me out of time. But as I said, I'm very happy to share some of these examples of offline and online lives with you. And let me just finish by saying thank you very much for listening.